Welcome to Brainstorming. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 105 of Brainstorming. Now, the day before yesterday, Thursday, 23rd of April, was St. George's Day. I know many, in fact, probably most, to be fair, of my listeners are not English or living in England, but English is the language we speak and love and make stories out of. And every year it knocks me just a little bit that so few English people know that St. George's Day is also William Shakespeare's birthday, or the closest estimate that we have to his birthday based on public records. It's weird to me to not officially mark his birthday. St. George's Day is on my calendar. Shakespeare's Day is not. St. George wasn't English and never visited England. And you're welcome to go on a real Googling labyrinth on that one if you feel like it. On the other hand, Shakespeare made a huge contribution to not just English history, but the language we use and which is spoken so widely across the globe these days and by so many different cultures. So I wanted to celebrate him a bit and also encourage you to think a little bit more like him in your writing. Because some of the creative things Shakespeare did with our language really left their mark because they were striking and new and playful. While Exquisite Corpse was invented a few hundred years later, William Shakespeare mixed and blended words in unusual ways, long before the surrealists came along. And while it's easy to think that there's nothing new under the sun, Shakespeare is credited with inventing or popularising over 1,700 words and hundreds of phrases that continue to be a part of everyday modern English. Often his wordplay involved adding prefixes or suffixes that weren't there before, converting nouns into verbs, or joining words together, quite aside from all the idioms he invented that we still use, like break the ice, heart of gold, wild goose chase, wearing your heart on your sleeve, and cruel to be kind, to name but a few. Compound words he created included puppy dog, hellborn, and lackluster, which is a combination of the Germanic word lack and the Latin word luster, which again we still use today. One of his most famous and intriguing techniques was turning a noun into a verb, into an action. To elbow someone, he took the noun elbow and used it as a verb in King Lear with the line, "A sovereign shame so elbows him." Gossip first appeared as a verb in the Comedy of Errors, so to gossip rather than just the noun gossip. Other examples of these are to champion someone and to father a child, whereas before we just had a father. But why am I talking about this? And what can we take from this as modern writers who probably have all the verbs we can shake a pen at? Well, I've been thinking about this. If you are listening to this podcast, then you are open to being playful with language and ideas, and in trying to create something different and original. So, take a noun in a story you're writing, one that hasn't already been turned into a verb, and turn it into a verb. How about dragon, if you have dragons in your story? What could dragoning mean, or to dragon? Or what could it mean if you've been dragoned? Does it mean that you've become obsessed with dragons? Or that you've been attacked by a dragon? Or infected with a disease they're carrying? Because that could be a plot idea for the world that you're writing in. I mean, just taking a noun, any noun in your current story, or any story idea you're thinking about, and seeing what it suggests to you when you turn it into a verb or an action. This may be really useful in expanding an idea and taking it down a whole new avenue. But not just that. If someone in your story has been dragoned, whatever you decide that means, then you could use this invented word in your story as part of the character's language that they use to talk about that problem or issue that's going on. And while this seems like a really small detail to add, it is a striking detail that the reader will pick up on, and they'll appreciate that. This would work as a sort of shortcut for world building, which is always tricky to manage in the short space of a short story. You can drop the phrase into a dialogue between the characters at the beginning, so your reader isn't quite sure yet what it means and what's going on. But as I've talked about before on this podcast, it's great to throw in a little bit of mystery and an unanswered question at the beginning to hook the reader in. Then you can find a way to show the reader through the action that unfolds what is meant by dragoned or elved or whatever it is. You could even take an already established verb like misted and turn it into something else. You just have to make it clear through the way that the characters talk about it as if it has a capital M, that they mean something more than the usual meaning of misted. I'm looking at my mug now and thinking, mugged? How did that come about? Mugging has nothing to do with mugs, as far as I'm aware. I might need to Google some history around this, but anyway. So, mess around with a random noun today and see where it takes your imagination when you turn it into a verb. Cheers, Shakespeare. Happy birthday. And now it's time for us to get storied. Right, so before we move on to the story brainstorms, I have some wonderful short fiction to share from my talented listeners who responded to the random word combination from the last show, the blood-curdling detective. Bill Riling, welcome to the show, Bill, wrote, "To the untrained eye, the blood spatter at the Tate crime scene might look like nothing more than a macabre Jackson Pollock painting. But to forensics detective Simone Deschamps, it was a story told in precise patterns, a blood-curdling tale authored by a madman." Well, this is a curious idea. I like the comparison between art and murder here. It's very suggestive of the mystery that might unfold from this. Thank you, Bill. Bill Riling writes across genres, including mystery, sci-fi, and dark humour. You can find him on Substack at substack.com at billriling228353. Or you can probably just do a search for Bill Riling on Substack. Nick Vrakar wrote, "The deputy said, 'Don't worry, the detective's here, he can help.' She smiled, but that smile faltered at the sight of his pale skin, fangs, and blood-red eyes. She stuttered, 'Hello?' He reached out a cold hand. "Miss, I'm the lead detective, but you can call me Dracula." Ha ha! This is great. As usual, Nick, you got straight in there, short and clever. You can find Nick's speculative fiction and articles at nvrekar.wordpress.com. Paul Monteith wrote a short story based on the blood-curdling detective and the condescending sombrero, because of course the full Exquisite Corpse in episode 104 was the blood-curdling detective threatened the condescending sombrero. An early morning mist curled like a cat around headstones and around the legs of Detective Spade. "I recognise that fedora," said a sombrero floating over the burial plots. A hush of voices surrounded Spade. Voices weeping over their final moment, others softly crying for justice and revenge, and the low murmurs of those who had accepted their fate. They were all his clients, seeking their corporeal owners so that they could rest in peace. "Have you found my owner, the head upon which I rested, so that I too can rest?" Sombrero asked. The hat tilted backward, as if an unseen finger pushed up its brim, so that an imaginary face could look down its figurative nose at the detective. The tilt also exposed a single bullet hole where the hat's crown met the brim. "Not yet," Spade replied. His desert-dry voice was so arid that it could suck the last trace of blood out of an exsanguinated corpse. "I'm still searching." "Searching?" With no eyes to roll or shoulders to shrug, Sombrero showed its disdain with a pft sound. "You couldn't find Waldo if handed to you bound and gagged." The voices around Spade agreed. "Unsatisfied clients," Sombrero said. "Perhaps you're death and have traded in your black cowl for a reflective vest and work boots and work as a city street sweeper of lost souls." "Death or detective, I keep the city clean of souls that have been carelessly discarded like so much litter," Spade replied. This is so imaginative. It makes me feel like, the beginning part makes me feel like, how did I not think of this? Haunted hats in a graveyard? You've made it make so much sense. Thank you, Paul. This is delicious and nutritious writing. Paul Monteith writes fantasy, and you can find him on his Linktree at linktr.ee/mostlypaul. And finally, Village Idiot, self-named Village Idiot, wrote, "A blood-curdling scream awoke me from my dream. It was I, the one who was screaming. I deduced that the terror came from an error in reading Hot Horrors, novellas that he's streaming." Now, just to clarify, Hart Horrors, that's H-A-R-T, Horrors is an author's handle on X. So that's what you're referring to. This is great. This is funny. I do like a bit of rhythm and rhyme. And Village Idiot, who is so named on X, so you can find him there, is reliably off the wall. So thank you for sharing your nutty poem. Right, it is time to reach once more into the never-ending labyrinths of our imaginations. But the journey must begin with the socks of destiny. That's right, Exquisite Corpse mixes your words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. I'll play 3 rounds to create 3 very weird sentences, exploring the possibilities they suggest along the way. Next, I'll try and pick 1 or possibly 2 of the most intriguing phrases that come up, and I'll use my 12-sided dice to delve even deeper. And my voice will get deeper as I do. Or not. Then it'll be over to you, with a couple of publishing opportunities thrown in for good measure. So, let me reach into the describing word sock and to find our first word, which is from Alessandro Bozzo, dilapidated. Okay, so it sounds like it relates to a building, but does it? Next word is from Paul Monteith. Capybara. Which is, of course, the South American rodent. Kind of like a long-eared guinea pig, I guess. But I did look this up in case further, ideas are needed in relation to this. Apparently, the capybara symbolises peace and wisdom of the earth. So, yeah. But this one is dilapidated. Right. I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to move straight on to the next. Well, this will be a phrase because it's an action from Anonymous. Hid in the library with. Okay, never fear. There's always another word, always a new possibility, a new direction this could take. This is from Bargy. Ferocious. Who or what was ferocious, hiding in the library with? Sounds a bit like Cluedo, doesn't it? Final word. If I can get these off my fingers. Okay, this is from Paul Thomas. Banner. A ferocious banner. Okay, so altogether, and I promise it gets better than this, the dilapidated capybara hid in the library with the ferocious banner. Okay, so hiding in the library with a ferocious banner, it makes me think, I'm just going to ignore the first part for now, for starters, but it sounds as if this person is in the middle of a protest. They're an activist out in the street. There's crowds shouting at each other. Maybe 2 points of view are being, shouted at each other. And it's maybe things have got out of hand. Fights are breaking out. So this person has ducked into the closest building, or possibly just a building that's nearby that represents a reverence for wisdom, which is what a library is. Also a quiet place, or where quietness is expected. It feels sheltered in there. So they're hiding, but they're also hiding their banner with its ferocious message, maybe. I mean, this makes me think about how, there is a lot going on in the world right now that is very polarising. And generally, short stories and literature in general are not the place to put forward political opinions. But if you feel passionately about something, or you're just feeling affected by the things that are going on in the world, you can explore or channel, maybe even cathartically, a situation, a made-up situation that may mirror in some way what is going on in this world. And that might help readers to actually connect with it if they're feeling the same thing. Maybe it's set in a fantasy world where there are other different arguments or prickly situations going on that in some way can be compared. The thing that people enjoy reading and find intriguing are the moral grey areas. So just bear that in mind. No one wants to be bashed over the head with a political idea or an opinion or a stance, even if those views may seem obviously right and just to you. This is not why people sit down to read fiction. They want an escape, but also just to explore ideas in an open way, an experimental way. It's a similar situation, actually, with characters. Everyone always says, never pluck an entire personality from real life, which can be legally extremely dodgy. But it's sort of wrong for other reasons, but it's a similar kind of principle. But I digress. Let me go back to the Exquisite Corpse. If we have if we have someone hiding, let's take that past first, someone hiding in a library with a ferocious banner, what does it mean to say that they are a dilapidated capybara? Oh, but didn't I say that this rodent resembles it resembles a guinea pig, but it symbolises peace and wisdom of the earth and the ability to handle situations with empathy and gentleness. I did not just make this up. I found it on Google. The magic of Google. So what does it mean to say that this person who's dived out of a protest that's turned into a bit of a mess with their own ferocious banner, what does it mean to say that they're actually an extremely peaceful and wise person? Does this mean that they've turned violent despite their peaceful views? Are there elements to their personality which they've never encountered before and which are coming out in this crowd situation that's kind of put them into a frenzy and so angry? See, that's something that you could write about. That would be very intriguing. Exploring a character idea where someone begins out as being really peaceful and having these ideals, these great ideals, but they are flipped in the intensity of this situation where they're up against people who have opposite views to them. I mean, if you could start with a brainstorm of a moment when you felt intense anger and that has tempted you to be more forceful and aggressive than you normally would be. This is very curious. Okay, so while it sounded ridiculous to start with, oh no, there was a story idea in there. So let's move on to our next Exquisite Corpse. First word is from Paul Monteith. This is very crumpled. I think it's been stuck at the bottom of the sock for a while. Malodorous. So smelly. Badly smelly. Let's try for the next word. Who's this from? This is from Paul Thomas. If I can open it. Orphan. Oh dear. A malodorous orphan. Next is from, they're jumping out at me now, Alessandro Bozzo. Named a child after. That's interesting, because when we talk about orphans, we normally we're referring to a child who's lost their parents. Oops, I picked up the wrong sock. Oh, goodness me. Right. Next word is from Wendy. Invested. That's a curious word. Final word. Oh, also from Wendy. Mansion. Oh my goodness. Okay, so altogether we have the malodorous, badly smelling, orphan, named a child after the invested mansion. Whoa, okay. I think I'm going to need some green tea to help me along with this one, right? Let's give this a stir. Okay. So the malodorous orphan named a child after the invested mansion. That's a curious word combination at the end. Invested mansion. Invested usually means you're usually referring to a person who's invested in something. Usually they're emotionally invested. But applying it to a building, it makes me think that maybe the story could be around the investment that's gone into that building. That seems to be what the Exquisite Corpse is pointing to as being significant, an unusual source of funding to build a mansion. And I keep thinking that this has to be an orphanage because you have the orphan in it. You'd normally expect that a building might be named after someone, especially a charity. That happens with like children's hospitals like Barnardo's and things like that. But the Exquisite Corpse says that it's the other way around. This smelly orphan, it makes me think they must be an orphan who's grown up, has named a child, possibly another orphan. They've named the child after this mansion. That is very strange. What could this be about? It makes me think that, I do like the idea of a building having a personality or a consciousness, but then again, maybe it's haunted. A haunted orphanage? Is that what's going on? And maybe a situation where to name a child after the building is to bind that child's spirit to the building. Maybe that's how this haunting comes about, but it's like a living haunting then. Or give that child special access to its unseen corridors that lead to places that shouldn't exist and that no one else can see. Maybe there's a tradition here in this weird orphanage that in each generation of children staying there, or at any time, one child must be given a kind of initiation into the strange labyrinths that underlie the physical mansion. And the name Butterworth is given as an adoptive surname to that child. And it sort of binds them to the building and to maybe this, who knows what goes on. It almost feels like a cult. Extremely dodgy. What if there's a kind of competition where the children are woken in the night or disturbed in the night and sort of coaxed out of bed by strange noises into an exploration of the hidden depths of the building, and they don't realise that they're part of a very weird game that is set and controlled by the malodorous grown-up orphan who runs the place, secretly or openly, and there can only be one winner. They don't realise that through this exploration, one of them will stand out as being the one who is the bravest, who manages to open a door that no one else can open. It's kind of like an unofficial quest, but the end result, the prize for all of this is to be bound to this building until they are old enough to leave. And who knows what that means. This is a very curious idea. I do quite like this. But I'm going to move on to a final exquisite corpse. Let's see. This is from Pour One Teeth, Flummoxed. So it's kind of like being baffled. Just, you don't know what to do. Next word is from Alessandro Bozzo. Goldfish. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so next we have an action from Sean, known as Blue Wizard Facts online. Nibbled on. See, I've had goldfish before, and they nibble on the gravel at the bottom. They sort of pick them up and spit them out. Right. I don't know if that's going to help us here. Right, next word is from, also Sean, Blue Wizard Facts. Desiccated. I mean, I think it technically means dried, but usually you're talking about coconut, right? But I have a feeling this is not going to be coconut. Okay, final word is from Paul Benfield. Umbrella? Oh, wow. I think it's my turn to be flummoxed now. The flummoxed goldfish nibbled on the desiccated umbrella. This is weird because an umbrella is used to shield you against the wet, but this umbrella is dried out. So you've got that opposition of dryness and wetness coming up. Oh, what's even weirder, there's a fish at the beginning. So there's this whole opposition going on in this exquisite corpse. Between water versus dryness. The flummoxed goldfish nibbled on the desiccated umbrella. I mean, goldfish nibble on things in a sort of exploratory way. But I keep coming back to this desiccated umbrella. If an umbrella is designed to protect you against the rain, could there be, this is ridiculous by the way, but hopefully things will improve. Could there be a type of umbrella that's thirsty? It starts to need water. It expects water. So if it's left in the corner during a long heat wave, it dries out. Where am I going with this? I feel like I'm starting to think about someone who creates things or changes things, uses magic to change objects so that they need to do what they do. Stay with me on this. Maybe they want to give them consciousness. A witch who decides that she wants a house that is alive, and her writing desk demands that she writes. Her teapot cries out for tea. What would that be like? That would change the podcast a little bit. I mean, it's about everything having its purpose, but everything must be driven by a sense of purpose to do the thing that it's designed to do. But then what happens when that purpose is taken away from them? Something is emerging from the mists and the oddness and the confusion of this as I describe it. I am picturing an umbrella that rests in the corner of the room, parched, and it's sort of gone crisp, like the pages of a very old book that have separated from the spine. And maybe this witch's decision to throw it into the pond at the end of the garden is her attempt to save its life, to make it wet again. And that's why the flummoxed goldfish nibbled the desiccated umbrella. But how do you make this story-worthy? I think the way that you can turn this into a story would be to ask the question, why? I know I've said it many times, I'll say it again. The heart of a story beats with the question, why? Why would this witch or wizard want to imbue objects with a sense of purpose, to the point that they become damaged or even destroyed when they can't fulfill that purpose for whatever reason? This has to be to do with her own situation. She feels this. She has dedicated herself to something, or possibly someone, or it might just be magic. Whatever it is, it hasn't worked out. She's dealing with more than disappointment. It feels like a betrayal. It's so fundamental to her sense of purpose. Maybe she was promised something, success, or just told that she definitely has a talent and this will work out. And it hasn't, and she's devastated. And now she doesn't know what to do next. She hardly even knows what her life means anymore. But the one thing she thinks to do is to deconstruct purpose itself by imbuing ordinary household objects with their own sense of purpose to do what they're designed to do, and perhaps cruelly, just seeing what happens. Okay, so I think the story idea that has most intrigued me is the one based on the orphanage, where, let's say, 4 children are woken during the night by a strange noise and end up exploring the corridors of this big mansion that's been converted into the orphanage, down corridors they don't remember ever seeing during the daytime. They don't realise they're being set against each other to compete, to take on the namesake of the orphanage, to be the next Butterworth. And while this role will give them special insights into the workings of the building and the charity, maybe, it also binds their spirit to the place. But what is all this for? What's in it? What is it in aid of? And why does the tall, mysterious director of this orphanage do this? Is she also bound to the building in the same way? I could, of course, just stare into space for a bit, or go for a walk, or just try plunging in and writing a scene. But why not use a 12-sided dice to find some categories of inspiration or interpretation to try this? Let's give it a go. You can, of course, find the full list of 12 categories in the show notes as per usual. Just rooting out my egg cup, because that's how I roll. Quite literally. Okay, 7. An invention. But how does that relate to this story idea? Could it mean that the mansion was someone's invention? That doesn't sound right, unless the building does some very weird things. Or what if the charity director used to be an inventor? Or if she grew up in the orphanage, that's what she wanted to do as an adult. But then, as a child, she was woken up one night with 3 other orphans, and they found themselves exploring corridors that shouldn't be there, following this whole pattern. And she won, whatever that means, and was therefore bound to the charity for life. So she couldn't follow her dream of being an inventor or an engineer, maybe, when she grew up. but maybe she still invents things on the side. Maybe this is part of what the current children of the current story discover as they creep down corridors slanting with moonlight. There's a doorknob that has to be squeezed, not turned, to enter through a mysterious door. And inside, strange-looking contraptions lie spread out on a table. This place is a bit like a museum of forgotten ideas, forgotten dreams. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this, and I'm not quite sure just how creepy I want this to be. So I'm just going to roll the dice again and see what happens. 5. That's a piece of treasure or a magical sought-after object. Well, this does kind of feel like the heart of this quest, or how it sort of functions as a story. The children will realise that they need to find something. They're meant to unlock something or discover a special piece of treasure or one of these inventions, to sort of reveal the heart of this mystery, like what's really going on. But I wonder if the magical object should also tell them and show them what the meaning of this whole weird clandestine game is. So if the director of the orphanage is or used to be an inventor, and she must at some point find and appoint a new future director selected from one of these children, though I wonder why, then it makes sense that the special object or treasure they have to try and find will be something that she has invented. And they would have to be children's toys, wouldn't they? Because it kind of feels that makes sense to the story. So the children who are tiptoeing around in the night, discovering weird doors that lead to even more weird doors and spaces that don't quite make sense, crawling through tunnels, going up ladders, finding all sorts of strange, impossible features to a building that looks quite normal from the outside and in the daytime. They finally come to this room that is full of funny-looking toys and gadgets. Maybe there are teddy bears that can read you stories, that can play hide and seek with you. Now that's some complex robotics. There are animatronic costumes that weld to your form, so you can climb inside a giraffe suit and find that you move exactly like a giraffe. Who knows how that works? Is it magic? But maybe one of the toys, one of the story-reading bears, it could be, seems to come alive and speaks to them. Although, of course, it might just be a pre-programmed message set on a timer or triggered by a remote control from somewhere the kids can't see. And this bear announces, maybe in a squeaky voice, that the children are here for a reason. But how much does it tell them at this point? Are they told that they need to identify a piece of treasure? And whoever guesses correctly and chooses the right toy will get to keep it and 3 more. And maybe it's revealed that they'll have a special mission after that. But maybe there is no treasure. Why am I thinking that? Because it has to be more complex than that, surely. I think what would happen, realistically, is that the kids will get into a scrap, fighting over a toy that seems to be the best one. But there will be one child who doesn't join in with the fight. A quieter, thoughtful child who finds a toy that they think or help one of the other kids who's not on this adventure, someone who's still in bed, tucked up in bed and no idea what's going on. Someone who's especially lonely or troubled or would have loved to have been part of this adventure. And because this child picks up, so that one of the four picks up something that is for someone else, so they're being considerate, then he is the treasure. He's the one who wins. But now I'm thinking, doesn't that make it really awful that his prize, in inverted commas, will be to be bound to the orphanage forevermore? That he can't pursue his own personal dreams and ambitions. Unless, maybe it's not forevermore. After all, the director, the current director, is quite young, so maybe it's for a set number of years. Maybe you have to work there for 5 or 10 years, but then, of course, leading up to that, while you're still a child, as the chosen one, you get to unlock all of these secrets about the building. And there are inner workings to the charity or to the building. There has to be magic involved. I feel like maybe it's like Santa's grotto or something behind the scenes. There are going to be elves or other creatures that work secretly to keep the place running in rather odd and unexpected ways, and that none of the other children have any awareness of, and no one else can see except this one winner, this chosen one. So when the child grows up and finishes their time working for the orphanage, they might even be gutted to have to leave and then pass it on to the next child. Or of course, if you like writing horror, you could make it more of an onerous thing and a nasty experience full of eerie surprises. I quite like this idea as the basis for something. It's given me images in my mind, especially in that unknown space at the beginning when they're creeping through the building. Who knows where it might go until you start writing. Okay, so now it's time to hand things over to you. Whether you explore this idea or another one that's cropped up on the show, I have some publishing opportunities to share. As usual, just a note, I haven't done any real research on these publishers and I only have the information that I've read online to share with you. So whoever you'd like to submit to, always just run a check on Google and check their terms and conditions of publishing to make sure they suit you. A Midnight Kind of Place publishes short horror fiction. Alongside publishing novels, they are now open for submissions in themed anthologies that will be published this year and in 2027. They're looking for quality, the next big voice in the horror sphere. They say, creep me out, break my heart, make me remember. The word count is a broad range, from 1,000 words to 10,000 words. Original fiction will receive £30, reprints, i.e. something that you've published somewhere before, will receive £10. All their current submission call-outs have a deadline of 31st of July 2026, and you just need to pick one of the horror themes that they've listed. These are Best of Scottish Horror, Rats, Wasps, or Spiders. For more details, go to amidnightkindofplace.com. Gavagai is a community-driven literary platform where writers publish original fiction, essays and poetry, and readers discover curated, editor-selected stories and emerging voices. I've had a look and I love the layout of this website. It really does seem to be a platform rather than just a site. It features different authors, There are editors' picks, recent stories, and chat within the community. You need to set up a login to be able to submit, which also kind of feels like an all-in community thing. So I quite like that. Anyway, Gavagai are looking for speculative fiction. They pay 8 cents a word, and 2,000 words they say is the sweet spot, but they will read above or below this for stories and poems. They also pay a flat rate of $100 for any piece for their Surreal Sundays. So worth looking into if you have anything particularly strange tucked up your sleeve. If you're still listening, then yes, you're weird enough. You qualify. Very curious indeed. Find out more at gavagai.com. That's Gavagai. And last but not least, if you would like to share a short story or a poem or an extract of a story for the show, an extract or scene could well be the most likely, because out of the Exquisite Corpses in today's show, there wasn't really one phrase or word combination that jumped out at me. It was more in the interpretations that I've explored based on the entire sentences that seem to be sprouting this time round. Unless you could prove me wrong, I think I would suggest either something about a witch or wizard giving ordinary objects, like an umbrella, but it could be something else, giving them consciousness or a sense of purpose around what they do. You could explore a scene where he or she is performing this magic, which might go wrong or it might go right, for better or worse. You might also show a glimpse of why he or she feels the need to do this, like what's going on with them as a character. Or the other option I would suggest is writing a scene based on this orphan story. These 3 or 4 children awoken in the night, stalking down corridors that shouldn't be there. What do they discover? Is it something to do with this weird scheme where one of them might win a special role within the charity and unlock secrets about the building? Or is it about something else entirely? You might have a completely different interpretation. Of course, either of these ideas may lead to something longer. If that's the case, fantastic. To keep to the 250 word limit for the show, just send me an extract of something. It doesn't have to be complete. It can be a glimpse of something bigger. But then, of course, I will want to hear from you if you then finish it and publish it somewhere. You know what to do. Go to tizard.com/submit. And when you're prompted to say which Exquisite Corpse you're responding to, you can just type orphanage if you're doing that one, or witch or wizard if you're doing the other one, or whatever else you might be responding to on the show. To be included in the next episode, please get in touch by the Friday after the release of this show. And if you write in later, I will just read it out later. Lots to be getting on with. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstorming. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at tizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.